piece I did when I moved to Maine, right after Florence, and a similar vein, about the same size. And then I became influenced by, like, Andrew Wyeth and those guys, the Wyeth family, especially N.C. Wyeth and Andrew Wyeth. So Wyeth is a good guy to look at. Not so much Jamie, don't tell him I said that. I know Jamie, but I don't particularly love what he does. I think Andrew is the man. I think N.C. was the man. And then Jamie sort of like is following in the footsteps, but not so good. This is also in Portland. This is a big life-size painting. Also acrylic, and this is where I started to use oil and acrylic mixed because I was able to work a little bit bigger. And then I said, all right, I got to do something a little bit more energetic, and I started painting paintings of boxers. Not that I like boxing, but I love the movement and the energy, and I was trying to describe the idea of activity and motion through paint. And it was around this time that I started to get on this whole kick of how do I describe motion with a plastic medium? The futurists tried to do it, the cubists tried to do it, and they did it well for what they were doing, but ever since the invention of film, that's what the cubists were, well, that's really what the futurists were responding to, was film and video and mechanisms and things. But I hadn't really seen anyone able to really describe the idea of energetic interchange and movement that way with painting, and so I was trying to deal with that using photography. So here I started to go back to my combining photography and painting from life, and then occasionally I would go out and do plein air stuff. So this is on location down south. When I was living in Maine, I was still traveling to Italy once or twice a year, so I did this on location. I stuck the figure in there back at my studio. And living in Maine, I was influenced by the stuff around me, so I started to do these sort of Wyeth-like paintings of friends of mine and at their farms and things like that. This is oil. This is the same deal, same time of the month, and same model. Then I started looking at light, and so I was still exploring these ideas of movement, but I was also exploring the ideas of light and how light can move through and around. And then I was influenced by, this is a danger zone, I was influenced by an art dealer in New York who said, you should paint more of this, you should paint more of that. I was young and impressionable, and I said, all right, beautiful women in cafes, I can do that. Those things sell. And so I started to do these, and I realized that it was like a cliche pretty quickly, and I realized within a couple of years that there are a lot of people doing that kind of work. We talked about that, and I couldn't care less about it. So I put this up there because it was a time in my life where I was sort of stuck between the influence of commercial art and having to make a living and wanting to make a living, and what do I really want to paint? And then being influenced by these big, powerful art dealers in New York and all that craziness. Same stuff. Same stuff. And then I moved back to Italy. I was in Italy for another month. I had an artist residency. I met the director of a school there. She offered me a full-time teaching job running the painting program at the Siena School for Fine Art. I said, yeah, I want to move back to Italy. I sold my house, sold my car, left my girlfriend, although she was supposed to move with me. She didn't. That's a whole other story. We can talk about that over a glass of wine. And lived in Siena, moved to Siena, taught full-time at the Siena School for Fine Art, and did a bunch of paintings about the polio. But still, I was still influenced by the idea of movement, but I wasn't really painting movement necessarily. I was, but I wasn't. I was painting movement like a camera captures movement, and I was stuck. I love painting from life and drawing from life, and I tell you, there's nothing to replace that as visual artists. Nothing in the world substitutes working from life, from observation. It's the most important thing you can do as a painter, as a draftsman, as a printmaker, as a sculptor. Whatever you're doing, you gotta work from life. But there's great information in photography, and I love photography, and I've been doing photography since I was a little kid, but I still was making paintings and photographs, and that was not pleasing at a certain level. So then I'm like, well, how do I, describe this power and grace and movement of the polio? And I still loved plein air painting. So I did a bunch of paintings in Siena in plein air, or outdoors on location. So we talked about that also. The importance of that, capturing light and understanding these kinds of dynamics that you cannot get from a photograph. So I did, every day I was out painting on location, even if it was an hour or two. It was really great. Changed my perception of light and atmosphere. Here's an example. I would paint big paintings, 4 by 5 feet, and I would paint these little 3 by 4 inch panels and stuff like this. But it was a gorgeous experience. That's the larger. That's that. But they're quick. I mean, this is like a 2-hour study. You just got to bang it out before the light changes. And then I moved back to New York from Siena. Took a studio in New York and started painting. Again, I was wrapped up in this whole like, what's great? What's going to sell? I was looking at a lot of J.W. Waterhouse. Waterhouse did a ton of amazing paintings. They're pre-Raphaelite. He did paintings of all these ancient mythological stories and poems, Tennyson poems. So I decided to do that, and I started painting. This is the Sleeping Lady of Malta, based on the figurine that they found in Malta and that kind of stuff. So there's all these narratives going on. But still, I was frustrated because I couldn't get the movement, and was painting still on location. So these are life studies I was doing. This is a small little oil study of a friend sitting by a fire. Studies in my studio in New York, quick studies. This is also my studio in New York. This is a model who was changing in my studio in New York, and there was this moment where she was changing, and I said, oh, look at that light. This was in Portugal. Same kind of thing. I did a bunch of drawings and sketches of these folks and did a big painting from that. But I was still searching for my language. I was still searching for a technical narrative. I couldn't quite get it. More guys painting, party that we had. There was a plein air painting party. Some of these guys you might know, Jeremy Lipking, Logan Ashish, Paul Schulenberg. They're all figurative realist painters. Lipking is on the right. Logan Ashish playing the banjo there. So we were painting together, and I did this little deal. And then I kept doing my plein air stuff. So this is a plein air painting in Boston at the Haymarket. Done on location, and then I went back over the course of 3 weeks, 3 weekends in a row, and painted all this stuff right there. And then I was doing work for different places in New York. So these are portraits, pencil drawings, and graphite drawings of famous actors for the Players Club in New York City. So I was also doing commissioned portraits at the time. This is both Walter Hamden in some of his favorite and famous roles, famous actor. And then I moved back to Boston, started working with the gallery in the Cape, and they loved my figurative work, but they were like, yeah, we can't sell naked people and nudes and the city scenes, whatever. So we love your figure work, but what can we sell? And I said, well, I know these guys, they're friends of a friend, and they're lobstermen, and they're good dudes, and they're like burly young guys, and they're living on the ocean lobstering. So I spent a couple of days on the boat and did a bunch of paintings of these dudes lobstering. It's a very difficult, very brutal life, and I tried to make paintings that were not full of blood and guts, because that's pretty much what it is. It's the stinkiest, smelliest, bloodiest experience like I've ever had. And like everything's moving, and you're like gonna vomit at any moment. And so I tried to make nice looking paintings from like a really awful experience. And so there's another one. This one I climbed up on the front of the boat and was photographing through the window. Here's another one. These are pretty big. These are like a life size or so. Oh, who's that? So then I said, forget all this stuff. I'm going back to school. I'm going to grad school. So this is my first year of grad school. I had to do 1 million self-portraits my first year at the academy. This is just graphite and charcoal. And back to academia, back to, one-time sitting nudes with graphite. And I did a lot of this with Stephen DeSalle and Stephen DeSalle's class, and Vincent Desiderio and these guys. Just a lot of these kinds of drawings. Very academic. This is a silver point in carbon on clay coat paper, which is a fun way to work. This is a life-size charcoal. So then I started to say, all right, by the end of my first year of grad school, I was stifled again, and I needed to talk more about this mysterious thing called the technical narrative, and how I do it. And I love movement. I've been dealing with movement my whole life. I'm a physical person. I've been an athlete my whole life, and I've practiced and trained and all sorts of stuff, physical stuff. And how I bring that to my painting without making paintings of a thing, And so the other thing I want to think about is a technical narrative starts to design the ability in the ultimate levels to make paintings that give you a visceral feeling about the experience of this scene or this person, as opposed to here's a painting of a thing. Here's the illustration of this thing. And so that's been my goal, is to make paintings that you look at and you just feel. I'm still working on it. So I started doing paintings of, this is another life-size painting of a friend of mine who's a yoga teacher, and I'm like, okay, movement, right? And here's I am falling back into my old trap, making a painting of somebody who I think might be, but she's not moving, nothing's moving. So what's next? Oh, another self-portrait. You know, more self-portraits. First year. Then looking at light and color. Understanding warm and cool relationships. So I did a lot of this kind of work at the Academy. Warm and cool, all working from live models. This is a quick sketch, like a 20-minute sketch, just looking at structure and warm and cool, like a life-size thing. Oh God, another self-portrait. I mean, when people came into my studio in my first year of school, they were like, are you like the most narcissistic person ever? I know, I swear, these are all assignments. I had to do like 35 self-portraits, you know, in my first year, but anyways. Okay, that one's here. And then I started doing work towards my thesis. And what's my thesis going to be? My thesis is going to be trying to find some kind of technical narrative for my natural tendency to want to work very loose and very brushy. And I'm not a photorealist. I never have wanted to be. I've never been a photorealist. I want to put that feeling and energy into the mark making. How does that technique connect to the subject matter, and how does that connect to my emotional response? So this is sort of the very beginning of exploring this stuff. I mean, hey, I'm living in New York City. I'm dealing with crowds. I'm living in the East Village. There are millions of people I'm dealing with every single day. It's crowded. It's obnoxious. It's wonderful. But like, I deal with crowds every day. So I started, and it was chaos.